167 was a bad, really bad hit. I would hit that something. Except for discrimination, I was in a professional tennis player. All state basketball in Georgia, state champions 3 years straight, lost one non-conference game, played at the Tennis Hall of Fame in Newport. Because my house is right down the street from it, near the first beach, okay? Those ladies can't return my serve. You can't return a serve, you can't win a game, okay? So, is everybody in here now? Okay, I don't like to stand with my back to people, so I think we have some little cubby holes here. Now, I want to tell you guys something real fast. First, I want to point out what's authentic. The stove, the kettle, the metal Mac dinnerware, the flatware. The young kids tell me the microwave, okay? And the old kids tell me the toaster oven. The canister set, that's what's authentic in here. Period pieces, the old washing machine, the hot water heater. Miss Vera Harris's family gave us the ice box, also known as Frigidaire. Over there you'll see a little Coke bottle. In a lot of towns back there where Martin Luther King was here, now we can get more people in this kitchen. I want to tell you something, this is close you're going to get to hallowed ground earth right in here. But anyway, in a lot of towns back there, people, can you pick up that little Coke bottle? Black people couldn't buy that, that was a white man's drink. I got pictures in some of the books I have that says whites only because they thought it still had cocaine in it and they didn't want us touching where they kept it. Now, I want to tell you something. Come on, somebody can stand in the cubby hole over there and come on, they gotta come in here. This is special. Okay? I don't turn the lights on when I bring people in here because I want everybody who walks in here to think midnight. Dr. King gave a sermon the year before he was murdered. It's called Why Jesus Called a Man a Fool. He gave it at Mount Pisgah in Chicago. And he took his text from Luke chapter 12, verses about 16 through 21. It's the parable about the man who had the big harvest. And he didn't have a barn big enough, so he tore down an old barn, put the, all the wares in it and everything, and said, "It is well in my soul. I can eat, drink, and be merry for many years," okay? And God spoke to that man and said, "Thy fool, don't you know that tonight your soul is required of you? And who shall be these treasures you've laid up on earth?" Pretty much, that's it, okay? I used to have graphic memory, photographic, now it's just graphic, okay? But that's pretty much it. But anyway, so Dr. King comes home about midnight, but before shortly before then, he told some people, he said, "If you find me sprawled out somewhere," he's getting scared because all these threats, not telling anybody, trying to keep it from Coretta. He said, "If you find me sprawled out somewhere," he said, "this movement must go on." And I told you how well Ralph Abernathy knew him. Ralph asked him, "So what are you talking about if we find you sprawled out somewhere?" He said, "Well, I'm talking in general terms. If something should happen to me." Ralph told him, "Come on." He said, "I know you better than that." He said, "Something is bothering you. What is it?" And that's when this young preacher confessed. But listen to how he confessed. Told Ralph about those threats and told him that fears were creeping up on his soul. Not his body and his mind, but his soul, his very essence. Martin Luther King was no deity. People try to deify him. Scared prophet might be a better description. So he comes home about midnight, had been working with that steering committee of the MIA. As soon as he starts to doze off. Coretta sleeping in that same bed you just saw in there. Baby in the bassinet. As soon as he starts to doze off, phone rings. "Nigger, we're tired of you and your mess now. And if you're not out of this town in 3 days, we're going to blow your house up and blow your brains out." So, he's already scared. The fears are creeping up on his soul. Hangs that phone up, said he couldn't go back to sleep. He could use it, go back to sleep. Figures another nut calling you. So, he described himself as frustrated and bewildered. Those are his adjectives, not mine. Told us exactly what he did. Said he got out of bed, started to pace the floor, and he ends up right here in his kitchen. Told us exactly what he did. Said he poured a cup of coffee, sat at that table, hovered over that coffee, and just like Jesus in the Garden of Gethsemane, started to pray out loud. Now, he was already a preacher, but he said on that night, he knew he had to know the God that his mother and father taught him about for himself. He said, "Mama couldn't help me, Daddy couldn't help me." He said, "Nobody could help me." He said, "They're 175 miles away. Best friend is sleeping in that bed, and then he's trying to keep it from her anyway." So he starts to go to the God that his mother and father told him about, the God, he said, that could make a way out of no way. He says, "Lord, I'm down here." He said, "I'm trying to do what's right." He said, "I think the cause we represent is right." He said, "But I must admit, I'm losing my courage." All of a sudden, he started to feel a strong stirring in his chest, Mr. Pugh. Mr. Pugh?
Yes, ma'am.
What's your first name?
Samuel.
Samuel. Right? To tell the truth, Martin Luther King Jr. told it himself. He came in this kitchen that night to try to figure out how to get out of Montgomery without appearing to be a coward. I told you his father was just like Vernon Johns, in your face, see a good fight, get in it. But he cried when he couldn't get his son not to come back down here and lead this bus boycott. And when they couldn't get him not to come, both sides of the family tried to get him to send his wife and his baby, and she wasn't going either. And they talking about killing his little baby Yoki, the love of his life. So he starts to feel that strong stirring in his chest. Mr. Pugh.
Yes, ma'am.
Did that on purpose. If that voice had said, I need somebody to help me, he could have hidden in the crowd with everybody else. But when somebody calls your name, they're talking to you and only you. And so he heard that inner voice call him by name. Martin Luther, stand up for truth. Stand up for justice and stand up for righteousness. And lo, I will be with you always, even until the end of the world. Know what he said happened there right here in this kitchen? That's why it's close you're going to get to heaven ground on earth. All of the fears left him. It was a turning point, a defining moment, a revelation, a word from God. It was an epiphany. And you heard it crystal clear, and I've been to the mountaintop if you read it. He said, I'm happy tonight. I'm not fearing any man. I just want to do God's will. But I ask everybody who comes in here, where did he lose those fears? If anybody asks you, you say your history teacher. Tell them January 30, 1956, when he was 27 years old, 309 South Jackson Street, Montgomery, Alabama, right here in this kitchen. And he felt like he could carry on. And he was right about that phone call. He said he couldn't put it down because it was such an ugly voice. They bombed his house 3 days later. And then they went to spend the night down the street at Alabama State at Joe Brooks' house. And that's why I know they all slept in that bed, because early in the morning her father's knocking on the door, but they're scared to answer the door. Can't see him until he starts to leave, and they see who it is, her daddy, Obadiah Scott, who said, I came to get my daughter, my granddaughter, take them home with me until things cool off. And that's when she looked him in the eye and said, Daddy, I appreciate it, but my place is here with my husband. Another profile encouraged when Martin Luther King Jr. was gunned down in Memphis. Coretta took her 3 little children to Memphis and led that same march they killed her husband about and gave a speech. So I don't care what Daddy King thought. She had the right man and he had the right woman, and she said she's pretty sure that he knew he was never ever coming back from Memphis, because when he used to go somewhere, he used to always send her flowers, cut flowers. But this time he sent her beautiful red carnations, and when she touched them, she found out they were artificial. And she called him on him, Martin, why did you send me these fake flowers? And he told her, I wanted to give you something you could keep. And last but not least, I want to tell you guys why I'm in here working and I don't need a job. When I was teaching in Rhode Island, one of my tall, blonde, white students, she's not quite tall and quite blonde, but you'll make as good a prop as any. Tall, blonde, white student, Sir Andrew Lyle, put his arm around me. He said, Miss Cherry, said, you the freest person I know. I'm going, Andrew, let me get this straight. I think this boy's crazy, okay? I said, you're white, you're male, your family has money, you're very handsome, very intelligent, and you think I'm the freest person you know? He said, yeah. Never had thought about it, but Andrew clarified for me. I said, you know why you think that? Because Martin Luther King Jr. taught me how to be free. See, Andrew, a little white New England student, could never imagine I was 10 years old when Emmett Till was murdered. And my family showed me that picture. What's your name?
Lucky.
Who?
Lucky.
Lucky. Ooh, Lucky, I picked a good one. Okay. My family showed me that picture of Emmett Till in the casket. Have you guys ever seen it?
Yes.
Okay, Emmett Till insisted that they have an open casket. And they told me that if I didn't want to end up like that, I better stay in my place. Stay in my place meant go in the back doors, saying yes sir, no sir to every white person, even though they were younger than I, cross the street if I see them. And here's the real kick of Lucky. They told me never ever to look a white person in the eye. Only thing worse, I told you before, only thing worse than an uppity nigger was a nigger lover. So I always had to make myself a little bit lower, okay? And here comes Martin Luther King, speaking in a voice that nobody could ignore, doing what all good speakers do, making you think he's talking just to you. He said, I can never be what I ought to be until you are what you ought to be as a human being. He said segregation gives white people a false sense of superiority and black people a false sense of inferiority. And Lucky, here's why I was really listening. He said, nobody can ride your back unless it's bent. So I've been walking up right here since, looking at everybody in the eye. That's what he meant when he said longevity has its place. Like anybody like to live a long life. But he talked about the quality of life. He told me that if I live my life in fear, it's a matter of my dead body catching up with my dead spirit. And if my spirit is dead, I'm already dead. So he gave me a mantra, and I gave it to young people. And you're teachers, that's why I'm spending time with you, okay? Give it to the students. I don't care what color they are. Whatever it is, and it, I know you can't use a pronoun without an antecedent. The it is anything that breaks your heart. And here it is. Let it break your heart, but don't ever let it break your spirit. When you're walking with a bent back, you're showing your spirit is damaged or broken. You gotta walk upright and know, I'm no better than anyone and no one is better than I. And that's what I learned from this beautiful man who lived in this house. won an award in Newport, Rhode Island for promoting racial and social harmony. And in the Newport Daily News, if you see that day, by the way, jot this down. Look up George T. Downing. That's the name of the award. George T. Downing got black kids enrolled in public schools in Rhode Island in 1865, the same year the war ended, okay? And you see a little black girl in Newport Daily News saying, I'm no better than anyone and no one is better than I. And that's what I want to tell you about this wonderful place. So that's it. And normally if we had time, I play a little bit of the CD, but we don't have time. But I want to tell you guys, you're not supposed to take pictures in here. They can't find me, I can quit. So if you want to take a picture of yourself in this kitchen, right quick. But you got to get to the church because we're way overdue now, okay? And we're going to go at that.